need the minister, we need the response. Okay. Now, we needed this to take 5 minutes Electoral Commission, 5 minutes Minister of Finance. And we conclude this.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. We did make our main presentation on the 16th of January when we appeared before you. However, with your guidance, Honorable Chair, you did advise us to put in a summary form the critical underfunded areas, which we did in our document dated 16th January. Honorable members, this is the one which I've opened for the benefit of the members. Now, we refer to that meeting, Honorable Chair, in which Parliament requested us for additional information on a number of issues, as indicated below. 1, relocation of Commission headquarters. As we did mention earlier, the entire Electoral Commission headquarters on its current premises will be affected by the construction of the Kampala flyover, Jinja Express Highway, as well as the standard gauge railway projects. According to UNRA, construction works for the flyover project under Lot 2 are due to commence in March 2021, and the Commission was therefore originally required to relocate from the project right of way within 3 months prior to the commencement of the works, that is by January 2021. However, after a number of meetings with UNRA, and given the status of the Commission's roadmap, it was agreed that the Commission should vacate by June 2021. This would mitigate delay-related claims by the contractor. Any delay on the part of the Commission would cost UNRA and the government an estimated 300 million shillings per day. However, it is worth noting that this will be the hectic electoral period just before polling, during which the Commission would not like to take any risk and afford to shift, or we cannot afford to shift the heavy, sensitive and delicate printer and IT equipment and systems to another location during this time. Hence, the most practical date for the Commission's departure would be October 2021. The Commission had identified and completed the procurement process for the office building, whose total cost with partitioning is Uganda shillings 72 billion. Regrettably, no provision was made in the indicative MTF ceiling. 2, details of unfunded or underfunded priorities for the financial 2019-20 and 2020-21. The Electoral Commission has projected to spend a total of 868.64 billion shillings over a period of 3 financial years, beginning with this financial year and ending in 2020-2021. However, some general elections-related activities like handling election petitions and administrative units and women councils, stroke committees elections spill over to the financial year 2021-2022. The projected budget is presented in a phased manner, commencing with this financial year and ending in 2020-22 financial year, as shown in the table below. Honorable Chair and members, the table below is a summary of the projected budget for the 3 phased financial years in the billions of shillings. I don't know whether I need to go through with your guidance item by item. The total is same as above. Total on page 3, Honorable Chair, we are saying no funds were released for the activities planned for the financial year 2018-2019, and this therefore affected the implementation of the general elections roadmap or program. Furthermore, the MTF ceilings for financial 2019-2020 provided only 141 billion shillings out of the required funds amounting to 439.46 billion, leaving a balance of Uganda shillings 298.46 billion. The cost of operationalizing the 23 new districts amounts to 11.8 billion, has since been covered in the budget for financial 2020-21. The table on page 3, honorable members, gives the details of the unfunded or underfunded activities, and their respective timing is given, the timing as per the roadmap. As you can see, honorable members, the timing for most of these activities on page 3 is February 2020. Now, on page, the same table and the timing continues on page 4 up to page 5. Maybe I'll ask the secretary to highlight. The total of unfunded priorities comes to 518.944 billion Uganda shillings. Secretary, you may highlight.
Chair, as our chairman has indicated, the money for the first phase and second phase total to 438.46 billion. Of that, 141 was provided. That left a balance of 288, as you can see on page 4 on both. Page 4.
Page 3.
That's the total, but I'm saying when you add these activities, they are funded, they total to 288.46. When you add all these.
You want to use the microphone?
Thank you, Chair. So those unfunded priorities, which were supposed to be in the first and second phase, total 298.46. Now, in addition to that, there is the relocation of EC headquarters, which Chairman talked about, and as we indicated here, Chair, the wage enhancement, which you had promised, then the domestic areas there, but more importantly for general elections, the general election activities which are not funded, whose money should be committed and availed by July 2020 is indicated. Those are the activities that have to be done. The printing of ballot papers, declaration forms, taxes that go with that, all the materials, and that minus what was provided in the budget leaves that balance of 134. So when you take the 134 and you add the 220 billion, the amount that we require is 518.94, meaning, Chair, that for 298 we need supplementary funding because it ought to be here in next month. The budget for 2020-2021 should be increased by 134, and that would cover the deficit that we have of 518 billion, 0.9, Chair.
Period. We now get to hear from the Minister of Finance. The Minister has written in, and we've documented, wrote, Mr. Chairperson. I will read this after the Minister acting here as yes. But not a bad letter. He has written and is giving positive commitment. The yellow, you know, these days, whether you see green or white, the election is not about the colors. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The electoral roadmap budget has actually been discussed at the highest level of government. We have had a series of meetings, Ministry of Finance and the Electoral Commission, and of course all the institutions which have a stake in the elections, and we have actually agreed on a budget. We, as of course the Electoral Commission has said, we have been able to provide some financing as of now. And we are definitely aware of the shortfalls which they have, both this year 1920 and also in the budget framework which is before Parliament. Now, maybe let me touch on specifically two things. Number one is the headquarters. We have discussed with the Electoral Commission and agreed on how the relocation will be undertaken. In fact, as late as yesterday and even this morning, we had a meeting with JICA, who are actually financing the flyover. So in the short term, our view is that we are going to provide money for Electoral Commission as a stopgap measure to rent alternative accommodation as we secure the permanent accommodation for Electoral Commission, as we provide the resources for the permanent accommodation for Electoral Commission. Because according to JICA, in fact, they need Electoral Commission to vacate. I know initially, of course, UNRWA had indicated that they can vacate in June 2021, but the financials want them to vacate now. Now, on account of the constraints which we are facing, we think that the most feasible option is actually to rent, as I said, as a stopgap measure, as we secure financing for a permanent offices. So that's as far as the headquarters are concerned. Now, for the rest of the activities,
I don't want to disturb the minister, but since he's the Minister of Finance, let him give us the figures as he makes a presentation. How much you're going on the alternatives you are.
No, but when I chairperson, I definitely cannot give a figure of how much will be required for rent. What we are committing as Minister of Finance, rent is determined by the staffing levels and, of course, the rent per square meter. So Electoral Commission will go through a procurement process.
But Mr. Chairman, I find, with your permission, I find one thing disturbing. On the one hand, the Electoral Commission is crying here. On the other hand, the Minister is telling us as late as yesterday, that they have agreed with the Electoral Commission. If they have agreed, then what exercise are we engaged in? They are here crying. Are they crying crocodile tears?
Mr. Chairman, just 1 second.
Yes.
This is the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. The Honourable Minister. Two issues. You say you don't know the figures that the Electoral Commission may need for purposes of relocating to a rented premises. How then can you determine that it is certainly cheaper? You cannot determine that it's cheaper by saying, well, if they rent, they are going to spend 4 billion. But we cannot, as of now, raise 15 billion, which they would require. Then we would look at the opportunity cost. But if you don't have the figures, how did you arrive at that decision? That's point number one. Point number two, we go back to the document which you have. Page 1, last paragraph. However, it is worth noting that this would be polling period during which the Commission will not risk and or afford to shift the heavy, sensitive and delicate printer and IT equipment and systems to another location. Are you therefore going to shift? Then again, shift. That's what you are planning. And at the end, what will be the cost? There is a little bit of a problem, Chair. Sometimes, maybe the problem is ours. We don't ask the correct question. But if you are coming to a committee like this one, we need real answers, which make both legal, economic sense. From your submission, Honourable Minister, it doesn't. Unless you give us the figures, then we know, yes, in the short run, we can afford to spend 4 billion because we cannot raise 30. But if we are going to spend 4 billion because you cannot raise 6, then you would rather look for the 6 than not spend 4 because it will actually be a loss.
Chairman, can I answer that question?
Those questions.
First of all, according to the East, according to the EC document, the cost of buying a building is 72 billion. Buying a building is 72 billion. What I said is that as a stopgap measure, meaning for a couple of months we are looking at renting, I do not believe that there is in any way that the cost of renting, even if it is actually 1 year, we know the property values definitely in the areas, because EC has been actually looking at a number of options. So we know the areas they have been looking at. So we know definitely the average. What I do not know at this point, of course, is the exact cost that would come out of the procurement process. But definitely we know the range.
Committee, Mr. Mugambe, for us now, we are in a budget process. We discuss figures, whether figures make sense or not.
Which is okay, Mr. Chairman. As I said, the Electoral Commission will indicate the cost of renting, and the Minister of Finance has confirmed that that cost of renting will be provided. That's the point I'm making, Mr. Chairman.
So just a minute. What Honorable Katuntu raised, I believe that by training you are an economist.
Mr. Chairman, procedure.
Yes, procedure.
You see, the minister has given you the position of the ministry. We wanted the figures, he doesn't have the figure. The procedure issue I'm raising is whether we should not give him time to tell us everything he wants to say, and then as the parliament we're going to make a decision.
No, Chair, I beg to differ, Mr. Chairman. You see, the minister equally has to be protected, even when I raised the question that he has avoided. He cannot have, yes, I asked you a question. You are saying you agreed with the Electoral Commission, but they are here telling us a different story, that actually they are crying out to Parliament to help them. For you are telling us you agreed. You have met them as late as yesterday. Today's meeting was with JICA. Then yesterday you met with them. So you have not agreed with the Electoral Commission.
Honorable Chair.
Chair, please.
If we had been allowed to continue, maybe it would have answered some of the questions.
Let's allow him to continue.
Just a minute, Honorable Chair. Just clarification. Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, thank you. Mr. Mugambe, Honorable Minister, does it not make economic sense to you and reasonable sense to you, given the reasons given by the Electoral Commission, that you make a commitment and pay this money which you are going to pay in rent, you pay it as a down payment for the home, for the Electoral Commission, and later you can top it up, because you cannot tell us that with the sensitivity given of the materials of the Electoral Commission, that they are going to be shifting to these new premises, then later shift. Please, can we be serious that you pay this money as a commitment?
Further clarification.
Chairman.
Yeah, we'll come to you.
We are at the level of looking at the budget framework paper, and the minister here, who has come in the name of the minister, tells us that they are still discussing at this point whether it was renting, whether it was what. By now we would have had a figure. But somebody cannot give us, we have already looked at the budget framework paper, you haven't included it anywhere. You are not jumping to tell us we are still discussing and I cannot give you a amount. And then the procurement has to start. When we are politicians, we do not want our results to be disorganized because things are being moved up and down.
Yes.
Because really in planning.
Yes, Chair, it appears that the Director of Finance is saying that Electoral Commission wants 72 billion. And I know that this is just for the building. The Electoral Commission talked of the other amount of money for the general election, among other things, which is quite a big amount. Is the Director of Finance saying that given all this bulk of what we need to provide, we can't provide 72 billion? We are prioritizing the other things.
For the meantime, we want to rent. And the question is, even if the money was to be provided, I know for us we want, instead of renting, we want maybe payment for mortgage. Given the concerns that have been raised about installation, the cost of building such a building, is the time frame that has been indicated enough to actually construct a building that would fit what Electoral Commission wants, given the time frame? That is also another issue.
Okay, okay. Mr. Kenneth Mugambe, yeah, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission is itching to say something. And here, who is the Electoral Commission? Is it an NGO? Are you a civil society? Are you an arm of government? Must you be seen that you have to beg to do your work? What brings you here if you have agreed?
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. With all due respect to the Honorable Minister, I'm not aware of an agreement we have had with the Minister of Finance to rent premises. On the contrary, in our discussions with them, we have always decried or argued against the concept of renting for reasons that, one, the equipment we have is extremely delicate. Shifting it from one position to another might endanger the longevity and the safety of that equipment. And secondly, we also pointed out that in our discussions with UNRWA, one of the critical factors we pointed out was our inability to move at this material time because of this very important national process that we are undergoing, where we need to have all our systems running 24 hours. Dismantling that equipment and reassembling it, testing it, will take on a minimum about 3 to 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. Now, we were made to understand by UNRWA that we are entitled to compensation for our area in terms of 22 billion. We had proposed that if that 22 billion is made as a commitment to the seller of the building, in addition to what finance is willing to give to us as rent funds, then an undertaking to the seller that at a certain period the balance will be paid. We thought that was more appropriate. But really for us to rent,
that makes a lot of business sense. You are actually not, you treat Electoral Commission as a person affected by the project. Perhaps. Would you come if it was my house? Would you come and tell me that you first go and rent somewhere as we look for money to compensate you? But this is the same government. I know you mean well.
No, actually they don't mean well.
I know you mean well on general. I want you to clarify. I want you to speak when you are giving Ugandan so. Mr. Mugambe, what we are talking about can either give the impression of having a sham election or no election at all. So don't take it lightly.
No, Mr. Chairman,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I think let me clarify on the point which the chairman raised. I think what I said is that we have had discussions. The issue of renting, we definitely have not discussed it with the Electoral Commission. No, I said we have had discussions with the Electoral Commission. The issue of rent came up in the meeting with JICA. Yes, yesterday and today. And it came up because JICA is saying that for them to go ahead with the project, they need Electoral Commission to immediately vacate. You realize in the presentation by Electoral Commission, UNRWA was talking of vacating in June 2021. So when we discussed the issue of June 2021, the agreement was that the Electoral Commission can actually stay, okay, as we mobilize the resources for complete relocation. That's what I said. But this morning now, JICA comes and says no, for the project actually to go ahead, we need Electoral Commission to go immediately. So as Minister of Finance, we had to look into the coffers. find out, do we actually have the resources now, since it has become an immediate requirement for Electoral Commission to vacate? Because it actually would mean that you must get the 72 billion shillings now. And that's why I was coming to, as I said, if you had actually allowed me, Mr. Chairman, to continue. Yes, so that's really the point I was making. And I definitely agree with the Chairman. They were not aware of this issue because it just came up this morning.
Honorable Minister,
okay.
When, now as the funder to UNRWA, when do you intend to release the 22 billion for compensation?
No, we have already released money to UNRWA. We released money quarterly. The third quarter.
The second question
was released in January.
How much money do you intend to raise for rent?
That's what I'm coming to.
What is the ceiling?
No, I'm coming to that.
No,
Mr. Chairman. I'm coming to that. Now, Mr. Chairman, the second point I wanted to make is, and which one members are aware, we have made a presentation in this House asking for additional borrowing of 600 million euros. It's a fact because it is actually in the House, of 600 million euros in order to meet the revenue shortfalls we are facing. That borrowing is still being considered by the House. The reason why we have actually made that submission is because we are experiencing revenue shortfalls this financial year. One of the areas that we are actually going to be looking at is financing the supplementary requirement for Electoral Commission once that supplementary has been approved for revenue. So the supplementary request is in Parliament. It has not been considered. As of now, it is a fact. We have actually appeared in the Committee on the National Economy. We have presented our revenue performance, which actually shows that we're going to experience a big revenue shortfall this financial year. So as we discuss, as you discuss all these things as a committee, I would actually request that you also take into account the other information which is actually before the House, which is actually on the revenue shortfall which the government is experiencing.
Oh yes, but I just wanted you to get to appreciate the constitutional mandate of the Electoral Commission vis-a-vis, you're a tree grower and you also tea. You grow tea and you grow trees. At least that one you can afford. But elections are things that constitutional time frame is set. You can't postpone. If we are not ready with the money, even you can't even borrow money. If we are not ready with the money, Mr. Mugambe, you can tell Ugandans here are ready to listen that that money is not there, so we can't have the election. Yes, you wanted to serve.
Mr. Chairman, there is something that I've heard, but I'm yet to trust whether I'm hearing properly. That this sovereign called Uganda is borrowing money for purposes of election. Did I hear that properly? We are borrowing money. Did I hear that properly? The sovereign called Uganda. There are things we can borrow money for.
Can I give you information?
And that's why I was very reluctant.
A member of the National Economy.
Just 1 second. That's why I was very uncomfortable having Mr. Mugambe here as the minister. This should be the minister here to answer this question. At policy level, there is no way we will be borrowing money to finance our elections. Absolutely, it doesn't make sense. For those of us who are supposed to be running this country, and we are saying now we are going to start borrowing money. May the Lord answer your prayers, Mr. Chair. So these are policy issues. But having said that, either way, this is a budget process, Mr. Mugambe. For us to be convinced, we need to know whether you can earmark 40, 10 or 11 or 2 billion and you put on the 20, just Viabaka might say, then we know that would not be an issue. But for finance, we even don't know. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to us for Minister of Finance to say they don't know the figure.
Can I answer that? Can I respond to that? We have just a small clarification. I want to inform the committee. Parliament appropriated money for Electoral Commission, and that money is actually being released as per the plan of Electoral Commission. We are in the third quarter of this financial year. The money as appropriated by Parliament of Uganda has actually been released as per the work plan 100% to the Electoral Commission.
Electoral Commission, where are you here?
No, the Electoral Commission has said
But you're stampeding them with vacation, which was not in the money you gave them. You're stampeding them to leave today.
Actually, what Parliament did and captured in the committee report of this committee and budget was to approve money in advance for 3 financial years because of the uniqueness of the mandate they have to carry. They have made already projections. The projection for 2019-20, 2021, they're already all embedded in our budget. So, Mr. Minister Acting, what I know about you?
Have you got the entire 100%?
For 2019-20, according to your schedule, because he has made a very serious statement that can implicate. The other day when you people were here, said you are not getting all the money. Yes.
Chair.
You said doing the Kabaragala. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No problem. Chair, as you have correctly pointed out, for the 2018-19, we had a budget of 155.32 for the first. That was the first phase. There was no release on that money. For the second phase, which was 2019-20, the total was 283.7 billion. Of that, we were given 141. Without anything on the 155.
The first phase money, Mr. Mugambe, of 18-19, you did not make any releases. So why are you making a serious allegation that you released according to the schedule 100%?
No, Mr. Chairman, what I said we have released the money as per the appropriation of Parliament. That's the word I used.
No, you said
and the work plan, yes, the appropriation and the work plan. When you appropriate the money as Parliament, government institutions prepare their work plans. So I said we have released the money as per your appropriation.
You mean
and
you did not appropriate for 18-19?
No, whatever you have appropriated, we have released it.
So
whatever you have appropriated as Parliament, we have released it. You can look at the appropriation bill. No, the appropriation, we need to distinguish between what you have appropriated and maybe what they desired. But as my words are clear, I'm talking about what you appropriated as Parliament. So whatever you appropriated, we are releasing it on schedule. And I was coming to the same point. The fact that yes, they need additional resources. And that's what we have actually discussed and agreed with Electoral Commission. And that's why I was saying that for financial year 19-20, we are experiencing a revenue shortfall. You can accept a revenue shortfall, but it's a revenue shortfall. If the revenue shortfall happens, then you have to mitigate against the revenue shortfall. So we are mitigating against the revenue shortfall. But as presented in this House, we are experiencing a revenue shortfall.
Mr. Mugambe, revenue shortfall we understand and we appreciate. But when you are expecting less money than you hoped, then you reorganize your priorities. And the priorities are these. We look at this process as Mole's priority number one. It's one of the priorities. We cannot afford to mess up our country because some of the resources are being utilized for other issues which actually might wait until next or the other financial year. So this process is exact about appropriation and reorganizing our resources in accordance with the priorities of the country. The priority now is, are we going to have an election next year or not? And it's not an election, a quality election. If you are supposed to be moving equipment to a rented premise for a few months, then after a few months, you move them to another premise. They have already told you the consequences. We've asked you, even when you talk about money, because you are talking about money, give us the figures to see whether it actually makes sense.
Now, I want to guide. It is true that we have a shortfall. It's also true that election must take place.
Quality election.
This minister is disarming me, because when somebody you talk and he says absolutely, he's agreeing with you.
No, he's listening.
No. To me, I say absolutely many times when I am very genuine. And now, minister, the election must take place. Give us.
Absolutely.
Now, on a serious note, we need hope. We don't want fingers to point at one ministry or one Kenneth Mugambe, who comes from Rampara, whom I know very well. He means well, usually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You said usually, but not always.
But that is you. I say absolutely myself many times when I'm in agreement. We can't change your. We want now the finality of this matter. Give us. These people need to move, and the question of renting, rule it out. These people have 22 billion. Their money as an agency. Treat them as private. They have 22 billion. They can toss it before the owner of the property that we are giving you initial, So this issue of renting is just poor planning, which is happening in the government. Actually, for you to save yourself, if anybody is saying the Electoral Commission should rent, we just know that person is one of those corrupt people who are going to get their building to rent at a high.
I hope they have not already identified the Electoral Commission as a client.
Because the Electoral Commission was not even aware. They are planning to rent.
Tomorrow they will be dangling properties. So there is this one.
They are going to rent for you a house you don't know. Nobody is taking care of how many children you have, but they are renting for you a house with 2 bedrooms. And then, of course, I'm giving that as a. Mr. Mugambe, I want you to give us and give this country hope and make commitments here and now. How we are going to get the 72 million and how we're going to get the other funding gaps realized before it's long. If not, also tell Ugandans, no money, there will be no election.
Chairman,
you stop wasting our time.
Chairman,
and the member of the National Economy.
Maybe
yes.
to re-emphasize your point, Chairman, the need to recall the Minister of Finance to come to this committee arose because the Electoral Commission expressed doubt whether this election will be held without releasing money. And the money is in the region of 518 billion, which is a lot of money. We also know that police is asking for so many billions, the army is asking for so many billions for the same election. So we called the Minister of Finance to commit himself to avoid a constitutional crisis. We have you commit that this money will be provided so that this election, the peace, the development we've been talking about, the investments are not disrupted by failure to provide money. So you just confirm this committee. Will you avail the 518 billion for the Electoral Commission to do its constitutional duty. That's all. So once you commit, then for us you can say yes. The
but
detail
renting is out.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Renting,
Mr.
renting
Chairman.
is not an option.
Mr. Chairman, can
you make somebody with 22 billion to rent?
No, Mr. Chairman, I did indicate at the beginning that we have had discussions at the highest level of government, and we have also gone through the budget of the Electoral Commission. We have actually reached an agreement on the requirements for the electoral roadmap. And as Minister of Finance, we are committed to provide those resources. We are not in any way discussing actually, how much it costs. We have already discussed and agreed on the requirements. So we have actually finalized on
Members who have already eaten their
So to say that they have already committed, we have the budget framework paper with us, and that money is not there. So how else would you commit without putting it in the government budget framework paper? It's not in the MTF.
It's not that yes, we shall provide the money, but it should be timely. It should be timely. It's not about yes, we are committed to provide the resources, because there is already a timetable which government knew, and I'm sure by the time they came up with that program, did you discuss this with the government? Your program? You did, and you agreed to it. So why aren't you providing the money timely? And you can only assure us if the money is within the budget work frame paper.
Actually,
Absolutely.
Honorable Chair, when we were discussing with the UNRWA and the consultants, they were even asking us for bank account details so that they posted 22 billion of compensation. So in our thinking that it would be better if we utilize this money with the sale of the building, in addition to what finance is willing to give us as rent, but moving this equipment.
Mr. Chairman, yes, but before we leave the chairman to escape on this, you see, the minister doesn't have the details, the figures. Even when he was proposing rent, have you also undertaken a process of agreeing with with your prospective seller to know how much can be accepted as a down payment for you to move? We may be arguing, yet the seller could receive 15 of your 22. Yes.
And I think that is the executive function of procurement we want to go into. That's me, the good minister here of finance. And I said the good because my knowledge of Mr. Kenneth Mugambe is very fair and not disturbed. And you know that we know each other. I know him. Not false. No, he means well, and I will stay with that until where we were going is a level of making commitment. I know that Honorable Bahati was also on his way. Please. No. Please, the acting minister, continue sitting. You want a few minutes to brief you? Okay, please brief him. Tell him what we are here. And okay, I think we are making a headway, and I must thank you for standing strong. This issue of rent should be out of the way. But this is where government, they are disoriented. They are planning as if there is need, we can postpone the election. If you want to postpone the election, you should have told us, actually the moment you postpone now, we shall sue you, because all these members have put a lot of money, except Honorable Katun. They have, except him. You can't postpone these elections, and we can't postpone it that we don't have money. Then Uganda should be something else. Yes, members who are not introduced themselves, who came after lunch, you introduce yourself because you have the energy now. Yeah, you have the energy.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Actually, I have not yet had lunch. I've been having a disciplinary hearing. Yes, my name is Kenneth Ongalo Upote. I am the MP for Kalaki County in Kalaki District. Thank you.
Yes, that's Opote, the son of Opote, who was an Anglican reverend and was also a tutor in the Bible college. Yes, next, and is the chairperson of Rules and Discipline. Rules, Discipline and Privileges. Yes, next, Karega.
Thank you so much, Chair. We apologize for coming late. We were having a security issue or a security meeting. You know what is happening in Karamoja right now? So we had a meeting with the Deputy IGP, all the members of Parliament from Karamoja. I am Akelo Roslili, a member of Parliament for Karena. Thank you.
That's right. Next.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I am by name Sinamo Estela, my MP in Apaka District.
Okay. Next. I don't know whether you are now, this should become every time. Which district are you? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Wasego Doro Senseza Kavarisa, MP Kamwenge, member of this committee. I thank you.
You are not in Kitagwenda. Yes. Any other member? Yes. But honestly, the minister, we have to get this deal now or never. And this deal is for Ugandans, not for any of us. Yes.
I want to propose that, they usually make those things that we shall cover, they should do it in particular. They give us the figures, they offer to the Electoral Commission so that the election takes place.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, here is the substantive Minister of Finance, and is seated just next to me. You want to hear his voice. Honorable Minister of Finance, you are a very busy man. A Christian man, a husband, and a father, and very committed to this government. You've not had lunch. We spoke in the morning, you were in a meeting, you were still in a meeting. I know you're a man who looks forward for this country. It's your time now to make your introductory remarks and commitments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. I'm very sorry that because of the issues, yes. And I beg your indulgence in case I repeat something which you have already agreed upon. But one on the issue of, I think, elections which came sometime, we have no option. We will have to look for the resources to make sure that the elections take place and facilitate the Electoral Commission. We have had a discussion with them at the highest level and agreed on the direction. On the issue of the office accommodation and other requirements, we were requesting that we sit with them and then agree on the most important item that we should carry out this financial year, and then we hope that colleagues will be able to pass the domestic borrowing, which is before Parliament, and once that is done, we'll be able to have a supplementary for those items that we shall have agreed upon with them.
Yeah. Can we include, I belong to the Committee on National Economy. Can we include in that report that out of that money which you are borrowing, we shall commit 518 billion for the election process? We put it in our report so that when it is passed in Parliament, you just switch off the money as soon as we pass it.
For elections?
Yes.
No, elections next financial year.
No.
Or part of it is next year.
Yeah, but part of it is next year. The Electoral Commission is saying you have not included this money in the budget framework paper. So it is not there actually in their plan, in their empty whatever.
Yeah, but recall, Chair and colleagues, that the detailed budget will be here on the 1st of April. So after the budget framework paper has been discussed and you have made recommendation to the House, we take into account your recommendation to finalize the budget. But on the issue of elections, friends, there is no way we can't have elections. So we have got to make sure that by April, the resources which they need are provided for. But the items we're talking about are those that are required, where money is required in this financial year. And we're saying let's sit with them outside this committee and really interrogate each item and agree with them which one we must do given the resource constraint we have. And then we shall give you a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the means I've gone record that government as a whole has discussed the electoral roadmap and its financial implication. Haven't you, as government?
Yes, we have.
Then what are you talking about? That you're going to have to sit them and discuss what you've already discussed. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Chairman, is a question I did to which I asked Mr. Mugambe, but I was uncomfortable. Are you telling us that we are borrowing for purposes of elections, whether domestic? Is it correct for a government, a sovereign government, you are the policy maker, you are the minister, to borrow for purposes of elections? Or we should just reorganize our priorities and find resources within our coffers to finance our elections? 3, are you going to tell the people we are borrowing money from that actually here we want to borrow money from you for purposes of carrying out our elections? And let us look at have you looked at the details of the unfunded priorities? Have you? Which one of these do you think is not a priority? Because they give you the detail, including the date or month within which funds should be secured. It is already here. We have it. And by the time you come in here, you should have gone through this. And where you have got objection, you would say, yes, on this one we went through it, but we still think it's not a priority. There is a little bit of a problem, Mr. Bahati, Minister of Finance, with your planning. But that notwithstanding, for us, we must make our own decisions. But of course, the decisions we make, they need to be an informed decision that we've heard from you. So you need to convince us that actually what you are submitting is worth us listening and therefore making a decision on it. So if you want to see it, how will we get a feedback for purposes of us reporting eventually to the budget committee and the what? And the whole house. And moreover, I think it is this afternoon. And the Honorable Bahati knows that we are supposed to be reporting this afternoon.
Yes, what we are doing is you are raising the procedural.
No, we know they already messed it up themselves.
No.
Yes.
But you see, sector committees, we are supposed to look at these sectors in line with in the context of the budget framework paper.
Yes.
Make recommendations and approve these recommendations and forward them to government. And then government comes back.
And the national development plan.
What is hard is to have finance in these committees, sector committees, committing there and then
that yes, this resource will be got, because that's how the procedure is. The budget framework paper is with Parliament. You are interrogating it, looking at what we put in the budget paper, the priorities we put in the budget paper. Parliament will say no, we are recommending to you that change this and do this. And then these recommendations, once they are approved by 1st of February, they are forwarded to the executive, and then the executive reports back, and the law requires reports back. So honorable, yes, but Honorable Katuntu, the borrowing we are talking about is the borrowing for budget support, and budget support means the whole budget, including everything in the budget. So you cannot say that.
No. You are hiding.
No, Honorable Katuntu.
But you're not hiding.
I want to appreciate the minister, first of all. What you're saying is largely correct. The reason you are here in this one single sectoral committee and not anywhere else was purely the reason that the committee decided that we call you, even when we know that we are supposed to make the recommendation, is the importance attached to the general elections coming, both general presidential election, general parliamentary election, general local government election, and some beginning in 2 months' time. The special interest groups. When you look at the roadmap, when we looked at the roadmap and we had them, they're beginning in March, April. The registers are being for this display on 19th on what? February, and so we couldn't wait for that normal procedure. The business is not normal. That's why for us, we want our cut here and now, that as we write our report, we've gotten it because of this peculiar, and you know here, the 11 agencies, we've chosen to talk for Electoral Commission. Only, we are not going into the judiciary or what, they all have problems. But for now, because of this is time bound, we want you to appreciate that every general principle of law, there's an exception. We are benefiting from the exception, that you give full force and consideration to the Electoral Commission. So, Honorable Minister, I wouldn't allow you to escape on that we are supposed to report fast. We don't have that luxury. Your heart means well for this country. Just commit here to the funds that we are going, so that our committee report captures that. We'll refer to the meeting we had with the minister, the sector minister, and we make, it may not be as required in your whatever, but we can get the assurances. You know that I also mean well.
But that's what we have actually said, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, that we assure the committee that elections will be carried out. All we need is some little time to go into the details of exactly how much. The assurance is on the budget.
Finance will provide the required resources as and when the roadmap provides. The
yes.
roadmap, as and when. That's the assurance we need.
Yes, yeah, but the requests we are making, Mr. Chairman, after the assurance, we have given that the elections will be carried out as and when.
No.
The law requires.
That's another matter. We are not talking about generic elections. We are talking about the what.
I'll give you an example.
Why don't you answer our question?
Now, let me first give you an example why we need some little time to look at this final figure. You can't go at the polling station, and maybe Electoral Commission has suggested that let's have 2 or 3 people at the polling station, and we sit with them and say, by the way, given the resource constraint that we have as a nation, can't we carry out this activity with 2 people at the polling station? And given the experience, they say, yes, we can. and then we have some saving on that. So the final figure is very important to look at. But Mr. Chairman, let me not subject myself to the wrath of the committee. Let me assure the committee that we shall have to look for the sources as and when required, but also
in accordance with the roadmap.
With the roadmap, and but the executive also will have its own way of handling things. Thank you.
Yes, I think I need to. Getting that from him gives us the hope. We can't get the actual figures approved here. But one other point was saying that they need to look at the actual itemized whatever. But some of these things the minister you were referring to, that 3 people, actually most of them are creation of the law. That you shall have presiding officer, 2 polling assistants or what, that one we can't change. So where you can change, that's the nitty-gritty of the executive arm. Yeah, but there are those that are provided for under the law. The Electoral Commission also we don't want it to be very extravagant. So where you're extravagant, the excesses can be checked. You are raising your hand about extravagance.
No,
at least you are not extravagant, because any extravagant person, you would be putting on 2 jackets, one on the other one. But you're putting on one, yes.
Chair, the process of this budgeting took place over a long period of time. We discussed with finance. We discussed each item by item. And we gave them our budget. They cut where they could not cut anymore because they were touching the bone. And that is how we came back with the 800 billion. It was much more than that. So say that we are going to go back and employ 2 or 3 people is really not true.
I think the minister, because the minister had not seen this. In fact, what the Electoral Commission has done, you've put everything with the time frame as on page 3. Specialized training, ICT, the amount needed, February, date required, everything with the time frame. I think this is the best document that we can, Honorable Minister, you can see. Like this training of specialized ICT, the money is needed in February. And how much is needed? Actually, this can help you on how much you can release this month, actually.
Chair, I think we have agreed we should not really take much of your time. But what I say, I mean what I say. Because there are things as executive, we can find a way out. For example, if you talk about penalty tax, we are the tax collectors, okay?
Yes.
We are the one in charge. So if we have a difficulty now, we might delay collection of this and say, don't release it to the Electoral Commission now, because we don't have money and we are the same government.
Yes.
So those are the things I'm saying. So not everything, some is what you are saying. There is some way we can agree on moving forward, and generally we have moved forward. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and I want to thank everyone, and more specifically the Minister of Finance, to accept to come with the team, and then secondly, Electoral Commission.
Before you close, I'm always comfortable having a time frame, because this can be forever. This is our heart, and for us who are in the special interest groups who are going to begin, we are going to be limited. We might not have helpers in these polling stations because the electoral officials don't have money, and our people always suffer. So we don't want to look at presidential as the big thing. You have to look at the general election from the onset. So when the minister is talking here, he should be able to give us a time frame. Because at the end of the day, somebody will think of January of next year is very important. Things are beginning this year, and we need that time frame and commitment.
And Chair, maybe we need also to have a feedback on what they have agreed as a committee, so that we are at par.
That's very good input. Usually you give the person the rope.
We can get a feedback on Tuesday. Yes, on how we are moving forward.
How will we get that feedback?
The feedback should not be
In a meeting or
how do we do this?
But Honorable Katun, Happy New Year first of all. I'm not feeling the New Year, so I assumed so many things.
Okay, but honorable members, the minister has undertaken that by Tuesday we can have this feedback, and we can only have it here. Let's agree Tuesday, 11 a.m. we meet to get the feedback from the minister, and we shall meet Electoral Commission and the Minister of Finance here Tuesday. And of course you use this time to harmonize your figures. It's ugly to see two government agencies, you know. Yes, so we want to thank you again. There will be election, Minister said, there will be general election. Money will be there. The Ugandans want to know. There will be general election.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we want to confirm that there will be general elections because we're expecting President Museveni to win.
Meeting adjourned to Tuesday. Meeting adjourned to Tuesday at 11. Thank you. Thank you so much.